Wow, I have been so jealous of this chalice ever since I came to my first General Assembly in 1989. But those of you in the back may have not seen it, but it burst in up here on the stage, and now I may be more jealous than ever. On a flight from Boston to New York, I wound up in conversation with a teenager seated next to me. She was bubbly and filled with a spark. She shared the story of how she just spent the week with some fellow youth in Boston at a church conference focused on social justice. My ears perked up. Boston? Social justice? I wondered, is she a Unitarian Universalist? Not wanting to be narrow-minded about it and knowing that many other religious traditions care about making a difference, I said, "It sounds like you've just had a powerful experience. Tell me, what church are you a part of?" She responded, "Oh, the normal kind." "What's the normal kind?" I asked. She said apprehensively, "Well, you could say it's one of the Protestant traditions." Now I knew she was a UU. And I just wanted her and all of you to be able to say it to a stranger out loud. "Oh, which one?" I asked. "You've never heard of it," she said. I finally said, "You're a Unitarian Universalist, right?" Her eyes widened and she exclaimed, "How did you know?" So am I. This experience and others like it have me wondering, how do we tell our story? Is the story no one will understand our religion? I can't talk about it with a stranger, especially on a plane. Is the story we are small, no one has heard of us? The person in front of me probably wouldn't be interested. What if the story changed into, "This is a chance for me to share how my faith has made a difference in my life"? What if it is, people are hungry to know a faith like ours exists? A faith that draws wisdom from so many traditions and professes that the divine imprint of love can be seen emanating from each and every human being. Yes, how do we tell our stories? How are we equipping one another to tell the stories of our lives and of our faith? For that matter, what are the stories we choose to tell? Who and what do we leave out? And who and what do we choose to include? Ultimately, what is the meaning that we draw from the stories that we tell? And can the meaning change? Can the story change? Many of the most treasured stories engage our imagination and plant possibilities of healing and transformation at times when hope has grown most dim and all seems lost. The Israelites crossing the Red Sea, the parable of the mustard seed, and the Good Samaritan are prime examples. When most of us think of that first story, the Israelites crossing the Red Sea, we remember two things. Moses lifts his staff, and God parts the waters. Midrash, a rabbinic tradition filling in the gaps in Torah, imagines that there is more to that story. In this retelling, nothing happens. Just when it seems Nachshon, emerges from the crowd and bravely puts one foot in front of the other, and wades out into the water until he is in, literally, over his head. His courageous act inspires others to join him. To step out into prophetic possibilities. In our second story, Kisa Gautami cannot imagine life going on after the devastating loss of her child. The Buddha sends her on a journey to hear tales of sorrow and survival that reflect her pain and remind her she is not alone. Kisa realizes on that journey that to love what is mortal comes inevitably with risking the pain of loss. And each one of us is invited in that story to seek out help when we suffer. There is no pride in going it alone. And we are also invited to be the ones who open the door to another's grief, to be present to it, and to share the story of our own lives in ways that might lead to healing. Finally, the story of the Good Samaritan is about much more, so much more, than being a good neighbor. Jesus is talking to a fellow Israelite, and the enmity between Israelites and Samaritans was legendary. I picture their looks like those that I received when I went to Fenway Stadium, Boston Red Sox country, in full Yankee regalia. See how hard it is to show compassion. It is therefore shocking to hear that it is a Samaritan who cares for the beaten man, who carries him to the inn, and who promises to pay whatever the cost. The story imagines a future where the lines that we have drawn between ourselves and others are completely erased, and where we live into that religious, universalist truth. We are one human family. Wisdom tales remind us the stories we tell matter. They have the power to shape who we are and who we will become. As Unitarians, we lift up stories that call us to live into the spark of divinity and the depths of humanity that resides in each one of us. As Universalists, we lift up stories that have us act out that belief over and over, that we are interconnected and our fates are intertwined. And as religious liberals, we are so blessed. We get to choose guiding stories from so many sources: sacred texts, literature, science, nature, the deeds of our ancestors, and even the pages of our very own lives. In that last tradition, I want to share a story of facing uncertainty and finding hope. This is a story about a UU family I know well. Illness and grief struck 3 times in less than 2 years. First, a woman lost her husband. Then she lost her father. Then her 16-year-old daughter noticed a mass growing in her arm. After many scans and tests, the woman sat with her daughter waiting to hear, what next? The oncologist said, your daughter has a very rare form of cancer. There is no successful protocol. I give her about 3% chance of survival. She would have to go through debilitating and torturous treatment. If it were me, I would take her home and love her for the little time that she has left and not put her through that torture. His words were filled with confidence. The mother was stunned. Like Kisa, she was still clinging to grief. Her story seemed to be that everyone she loved would die, and soon. Like Moses and Nachshon, she faced an ocean of trouble that would likely lead to death, the death of her daughter. Should she step forward into those turbulent waters, or should she accept what the oncologist interpreted as a clear end to that story? I am so grateful that my mother did not choose to follow that doctor's script. My mother and I visited another doctor who looked at all the same tests and spoke of the same dire possibilities, but who told a different story. She said, I need to be honest with you. There is no successful treatment for this cancer. However, let's go on an odyssey together and try to figure something out. Any chance is worth it. We did go on an odyssey, and it did include a degree of torture. But here I am, alive, a minister, a mother, against all odds. You would have no idea. My story isn't complete without sharing how my religious community, Unitarian Universalists, in particular at All Souls, New York, buoyed me up on turbulent waters and allowed me precious moments to catch my breath. In fact, that community ensured that I would experience a degree of healing even if I had not survived. I was held by our religion without easy answers. It reflected real life. I remember spending hours with my youth advisor and peers as they helped me to live into the question marks that punctuated my days. Youth group moved to the pediatric oncology ward on some Sundays to testify to their willingness to go to hard places to share the healing power of community. And it gets better because you were in this story. I was here at General Assembly the week before I started chemotherapy, and I sat right there. Is that where the youth caucus is? Right over there. And the radical acceptance that I experienced when sharing my story with strangers for the first time. And the radical love fueled me to be prepared for the next step. 150 people in my congregation gave blood in my name. Quite literally, I am here in part because Unitarian Universalists were willing to give a piece of themselves so that I might live. These experiences have given me a deep perspective that life, unfortunately, is not a given, but life is a gift for whatever number of days are ours to claim. Each of us arrives at this moment in part because of the love and compassion or the courage and sacrifice of others, and each of us has the capacity to offer the same in return. That is our spark of the divine. Moses and Nachshon, they needed one another, and they needed the rest of the group to reach the road of freedom. Kisa needed neighbor after neighbor to be willing to open the door of their hearts and to bear witness to life after loss. The man, the Israelite, beaten on the road, needed the Samaritan to care for him, but the Samaritan needed the Israelite to be willing to accept his help. And then the two of them wrote a new story, one about unity and not division. Sacred stories, modern and ancient, are the ones that speak of a creative, healing power of love that exists in the universe and in here, that is able to break into brokenness and suffering in each of our lives and also in the world beyond. Do we tell stories and act on those stories in ways that make the bonds of that love visible? Who are we in these stories? Representatives from Wind of the Spirit, an immigrant rights organization, visited the Morris Area Clergy Council. And they invited us, actually challenged us to live into the story of the Good Samaritan as they were already doing. They were creating a story of solidarity and caring between immigrants of different countries. And now they wished to build healing bridges with non-immigrants. The man wounded by the side of the road spoke at that gathering. He is a day laborer who waited by the train station in Morristown, New Jersey, with many others hoping to find work. A landscaper picked him up and took him to a job site where he became injured. The landscaper offered him a ride to the hospital, but instead, he abandoned him 2 towns over by the side of the road, bleeding without pay. This incident was one of a growing number of inhumane actions happening in our community against undocumented immigrants. Our mayor had publicly vowed to sweep our streets clean of immigrants. He applied to have our police officers deputized as immigration and customs enforcement with the express purpose of deporting people directly from the county jail. The mayor presented this plan at a town council meeting. There was a visible line of separation that day as white members of the community lined up at the pro mic and Latino members of the community lined up at the con mic. Immigrants shared story after story of false arrests, of raids to their homes, of the separation of families, and of the propensity that officers had shown to point their guns towards unarmed people, even stories of this happening with children. Like the travelers who walked past the beaten man in the road, the town council members averted their eyes. They asked few questions. While I wasn't sure whether my words would suffice, I felt called to speak out. I joined the immigrants at the con microphone and began, "Mayor, as a person of faith, I believe that this plan will further divide rather than unite our community. We have more work to do of listening to all of our residents, of cultivating compassion, and of coming up with a solution to benefit all." I lifted up the history of racial profiling, and I countered his narrative that fewer immigrants is good for the economy. During the break, the mayor, shook me by the arm and shouted, "How dare you speak against me in public?" When the meeting resumed, he began a tirade. How will that woman minister feel when the next woman in our town is raped? Lines chillingly close to those the shooter shared in Charleston. He continued with a racist set of points that I won't share. I guess he did not appreciate my restorying of his narrative. After the meeting, I was asked to visit with a family in urgent need of a pastor. I spent the rest of that evening in prayer with a mother and child the night before her mastectomy, without her husband present, because he was in the jail awaiting deportation on loitering charges. My heart was broken, and my eyes were fully open. It was time for us to change the story. Thankfully, many others, clergy and lay people, including from the Morristown Unitarian Fellowship, immigrants and citizens, were ready to cross lines and cross turbulent waters to fight for justice. When the Pro-America rally was organized on the town hall with hundreds and hundreds in attendance, we were ready. We showed up in even greater numbers and demonstrated through nonviolent protest our fervent belief that all people are children of God. After that rally, we coordinated an educational campaign to shatter myths about undocumented immigrants. Then we formed a worker center task force with a vision of connecting immigrants and citizens with work that paid fair wages, inclusive of connecting women to work, a population so often left out of these centers. I was honored to co-chair this collaborative effort, this partnership between immigrant rights organizations, the interfaith communities, and other nonprofits. The mayor did his best to thwart our efforts. He said we were wasting our time. He said we would never do it. We would never get our diverse community to come together. He leveraged every bureaucratic roadblock that he had up his sleeve. But we didn't let any of that stop us. We were like Nachshon and the Israelites, moving ahead through the waters as far as our limbs and our spirit would take us. It wasn't a waste of time. People did come together. Pathways to work opened successfully, and we have since connected thousands to employment, legal counsel, and other vital resources. And I can't help but throw in, a new mayor was elected at the next election. However, the struggle for economic justice, to end racism, and to counter oppression is never about removing one person from power. We are far from the end of this story. That would be too comfortable and too complacent a place to remain. No, it is about the continuous work of disrupting narratives of privilege that are woven into the fabric of our society and our institutions in Morristown and every town, that would have us think that some of us deserve all of the benefits we have received while others merit less. We must continue to write the story. And we have written a number of chapters since the opening of Pathways. Some are a painful reminder that the work of justice and healing does not ascend in a straight line from brokenness to wholeness. And a love that excludes no one. Two recent examples. Last month, our police officers began to wear body cams, and this summer, we figured out a way to open the town pool to children whose parents work all day, which disproportionately excluded children of color. What are the stories that you and your congregation are living into? The stories you tell are powerful spiritual tools. They impact the way you view the world and how you are likely to respond. One story may cause you to be fearful and less resilient, and do we need resilience in this time? In the face of uncertainty and change, and another may just be the fuel you need to find hope and strength, compassion, and creativity. Unitarian Universalists are always on the lookout for new narratives that invite us into a greater wholeness than we have known today. Our faith asserts the revelation is never, never sealed. As we grow into a more multicultural, multi-generational, even multi-faith community, we welcome in new stories that teach us more and more about what love requires of us. Is it time to tell a new story? There was a time that I needed a new story. Long after being cured of cancer, I was serving as a chaplain in the hospital. I recall always being so intentional to touch patients with this, my good arm, and never to touch them with this, I called my bad arm. One day, I met a patient, the only person that I have ever met to this day who had the same cancer. For the first time, and not the last, I reached out with my bad arm, and I tried to open the fingers and place them on her shoulder. And we prayed. In an instant, I knew I had the story wrong. This is my strong arm. This is the one that knows a lot about pain and loss and so much about healing. This arm embodies strength, and what's more, these two arms embody my fullness as a human being. This is my healing arm. You too have known suffering. You too have known healing. You have been in over your head, and others have reached out to save you. You have seen others in pain, and you have reached out to save them. These are our stories. Tell your story with pride, with hope. Find meaning in the broken places. Raise your arms to the sky. You shall make way for freedom. We shall make way for justice. Together, your strength and my weakness, my strength and your weakness can find a way through turbulent waters. Let us learn to tell new stories each and every day. Here's a delicious one from this week. Marriage equality is finally here. And yet, the story of equality is far from over. We need to continue to writing chapters of racial justice, of trans justice, of justice for our earth. Oh yes, let us weave new tales, a new revelation, and let us live into that promise with the precious day that is ours to claim. That is to say, this precious day, let love lead us.